Hello and welcome to our interview with Mael from Biped. I will just ask you to briefly introduce yourself and your startup.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Mael. I'm 26. I'm one of the co-founders of a company named Biped. We are building a smart navigation device for blind and visually impaired people. It's a small harness that is worn on the shoulders and that inside embeds software that replicates self-driving car, but at the pedestrian level to avoid all sorts of obstacles to smoothen navigation of the blind community out there.
Okay. Very interesting. Could you describe what it would feel like to wear one of these?
So it's about 900 grams. It comes as a harness. You have cameras on the left, you have a small computer on the right on the chest, and a battery that sits behind. And essentially the cameras are going to capture very wide field of view around the person. There is an environment understanding software that runs inside to have the ability to detect potential obstacles on the trajectory of the user. So it may be, I don't know, some kind of vehicles, electric scooters, pedestrians, or just a low-hanging branch of a tree, for example. And once we have identified something that has a risk of collision, we play in audio feedback. So the person wears bone conduction headphones. So it's a bit of a gradual beeps that you hear, just like the parking assist of a car. So if for example, an obstacle is coming from the left, you would hear a beep, 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 but coming from the left in the headphones directly. It's a very simple interface. And then you can tweak around the sounds based on the elevation, so you can play with the pitch of the sound. If it's a head level obstacle versus a ground level obstacle, we have the 3D effect to reflect the fact that an obstacle is coming from the left or from the right. And finally, we can change the type of music note depending on the type of obstacle that's coming closer to you. If the person wants to have a different sound for a car or for a pedestrian, that's something we can always allow the person to configure.
What would you say were the key steps in producing this?
The first step started about 2 years ago. That was the first encounter with a blind person crossing a street. He was actually holding his phone in his hand and making a video call to someone. And out of curiosity, I just asked him, like, because it seemed like he was looking for something in the frame. I was like, can I help? And he was actually trying to avoid electric scooters and traffic signs that might be on his way when he was crossing the street. And that was one of the initial moments where I thought there has to be a way we can leverage self-driving systems to solve this at a pedestrian level. And once this was done, contacted the ophthalmic hospital. I would say that was the second key moment, the key collaborations we started with them. They gave us a lot of insights on what the core innovations had been in the past decades and what worked and what didn't and what was missing in order to have a standard solution, because everybody still uses a white cane nowadays. And I'd say the very first prototype we came up with that we put in the hands of end users was also one of the key moments. That was about 6 months after the initial idea. It was still 3D printed, it was still lots of cables hanging around, but we had the first test session that we organized with over 20 beta testers, and that was the very beginning of having this iteration cycle. And then afterwards, there was just repeating and improving the prototypes on the fly.
Okay. I saw that you had a launch yesterday. What do you have to do in order for that to be successful compared to your first prototype?
I'd say we iterated a lot on the ergonomics. That's something we completely underestimated at the beginning. If you want a consumer product to be used on a daily basis, the ergonomics have to be at the core of it. There's quite a famous example in our field. There's an app named Seeing AI, and Seeing AI is an app developed by Microsoft. It can read text for you. Oricam is a company that does that, but with a clip-on glasses. And the fact that you don't have to, use your hands carrying your phone like this to do it with Seeing AI, but you can do it automatically with Oricam, just having it clipped on your glasses, is something that made Oricam, a company probably valued 3 billion nowadays, and Oricam and Seeing AI, a very cool app that many people have but stop using after a while. And I think in general, improving the ergonomics has been at the core of what we wanted to do, and took a lot more iterations than what we initially anticipated. But now we got to something that fits most body types, that has the correct weight and the weight balance also, because you don't want it to slide too much, for example, behind if you have too much weight in the battery, this kind of things. It's simple considerations, but that make it a day-to-day usable product in that sense.
Yeah, okay. What would you have changed, or what would you have done differently in the past with your way of how you came to this launch? Is there something in particular that stood out?
I'd say probably getting help with parts we had no clue how to build a bit earlier than the way we pushed it. I think we were trying to do the hardware innovation in-house for quite a bit. We had 3D printers, we had students helping us prototype those stuff, but I think we didn't evaluate that well, what the gap was between what we were building and a CE-marked medical device grade product that could be launched on the market. And the second we found the right company to work with, first it was a lot more expensive than what the current burn rates that we were putting on this specific aspect of the company. But it took also longer than we had initially planned. I mean, those first iterations were good because it's a cheap way to iterate in many ways. But I think I would have cut it a couple of months earlier at least and started working with the right company quite early on.
And do you think this would have been a lot faster?
I think this could have been quite a lot faster, at least by a couple of months, which at the level of a company that's 2 years old is still quite significant. I think one of the areas that could have been blocking then is, since we're building hardware, there's both the hardware aspect and the software aspect that needs to be ready together at the same time. It took us quite a bit to raise our pre-seed round and to actually be able to go full-time on the project. So for the first year, there was only my co-founder who was full-time. I was still doing my PhD at the time, and we had no external employee. And very early 2022, that's the moment where we all shifted to full-time. We started to be 4 full-time employees on the company, and we saw a lot more velocity from inside of the team, which was a lot more enjoyable. So probably would try to also raise a bit faster so that the software could also be ready at that time. So
you're 2 co-founders?
Yep.
What do you think made you guys work together? What is an important trait you looked for in a co-founder?
So I had a bit of a mixed background. I started by studying economics, and then I transitioned to doing a PhD in machine learning. So I saw a bit both aspects of it. I think what I realized is that my key limitation was that I was a pretty bad programmer. So I needed to find someone who was technically willing to take the lead and at the same time really motivated by how we wanted to, by the mission that we were carrying with this project. That was like a pure random encounter at a hackathon. I met my co-founder. He was coming for actually an interview in my research lab with my PhD supervisor. And since he came all the way from Germany at the time, he thought, there is this hackathon organized by these labs. I'd rather stay a couple more days and do the hackathon. That was, just a random encounter, I'd say, but we kept in touch, and he showed great motivation to work on the project. And I think in the long run, this is the motivation and how the person fits with the mission of the company is probably something that was a key success, or like a key factor in the success of our collaboration so far with Bruno, my co-founder. Yeah. And hopefully that will stay there and we'll be able to push this even further.
So talking about pushing it further, where do you see it in 5 years, or how do you see the market related to this?
So I think the market as a whole is going to evolve towards camera-enabled assistive devices. What we're starting to see now is if you want to read text for a blind person, you use cameras. If you want to detect the name of a building or the number of a building, you use cameras also. And then quite the natural extension for this is if you want to do outdoor mobility, most likely going to use cameras also for this. And so what I'm seeing is a trend where a lot of companies are starting to leverage cameras for better assistive technologies in general, for environment understanding. I think the hardware and especially the sensors, the cameras we use are going to evolve quite a bit, become smaller and a lot cheaper, because right now it's one of the limiting factors. You're putting out technology that's quite expensive on the market, and compared with ultrasound sensors or whatever that are very common nowadays, it's also a gap that you're building or creating by having this new pricing out there. And more adoption of AI in general. I mean, we're seeing lots of adoption of computer vision applications also. There's a couple of GPS systems that came out recently that have a camera in the back so that when you get somewhere, you can actually take your GPS out and it can look for the number of the building. That's the kind of cool innovations that we're seeing, where I think in general the market is going to converge to something a bit all-in-one, because the blind community probably doesn't want to have too many devices that are responsible for small parts every time, but a more centralized thing, and then more use of computer vision and camera.
Oh wow, lots of plans. Now just quick questions. First thing that comes to mind, is there a book that you read that really changed your perspective on life, or anything, a book that you'd recommend?
So I'm not such of an avid reader, so I have more podcast references that I could go into. I think probably the podcast that's my go-to podcast would be How I Built This by Guy Raz. It's, I think, one of the few podcasts that highlights some of the movements and stories behind how people built a company. Also emphasize the luck factor in the story behind a business. And I think this is probably something we completely underestimate, or maybe that people have a hard time recognizing in the long run. But even until now, Biped is relying on the huge amounts of lucks at different points in time that I think we've really benefited from. And of course, there is ways to provoke luck in general, but I think this is that's a very interesting one.
Yeah. Interesting point of view. And where's your favorite spot to study in your study years, or now work at?
So we took offices now in Biopol north of Lausanne. I have to say the campus is starting to look quite nice. It's still being built, but they're putting the emphasis on having a real community focusing on medtech and biotech in general. And I was quite new to this field because I'm just out of studies and building a medical device for the first time. But it's quite cool to find other companies that build cool stuff on this. So usually I think COVID made me realize working from home from time to time is okay, but on a everyday basis probably a bit too much. So Biopol is my go-to place now.
Perfect. And to finish off, just a favorite country you've visited or been to?
I would say, we were talking about it right before the interview, but I think New Zealand is a solid candidate. Spent a month there, and I'd definitely like to spend another month there pretty soon.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And follow Mael Biped on LinkedIn or even Instagram, and their website to stay up to date.